I want to tell you about one of the most exciting developments in early cancer detection in years that also brings a massive market opportunity with it. I'm talking about multi-cancer screening that will revolutionize the way we fight cancer. But before starting, I want to tell you about the problems we face now and how multi-cancer screening is going to solve that. Right now, there are only 4 established screening paradigms for common cancers. There's PSA blood test for prostate cancer, colonoscopy for colon cancer, mammography for breast cancer, and CT scanning for lung cancer in high-risk populations. Reality is that there are lots of other cancers that have no established screening paradigms, but are still highly lethal. That's basically where multi-cancer screening comes into play. So now tests have been developed that can take a liquid biopsy, blood test, that samples all the organs in the body at the same time. The technology is still in studies, I think. There was actually one study in the United States that got blood samples from 15,000 patients that was looking at 3 assays. One was the whole genome sequencing. A second one was targeted mutation assays. And the third one, and I think the winner of the study, was methylation assay. A methylation assay. So methylation occurs commonly in all our cells, normal and cancerous, and help regulate the expression of certain genes that determine growth and cancer growth and so forth. And what's really interesting is that methylation patterns are easily detectable using this technology. They vary by cancer type, and what they basically found out was that they are able to determine using this methylation assay if somebody has cancer. In fact, it worked in more than 50 different cancers, and maybe more importantly, in a dozen fairly common cancer that account for, I think, 63% of cancer deaths in the United States. And also they have been able to do that with a very high degree of specificity. So meaning that the false positive rate was less than 1%. That's important because we cannot have commercially useful tests or a test that's out there to be useful if we're inaccurately tell patients who don't have cancer that they in fact might have cancer. And so that's one important point. The other important point that about this was that because of the different methylation patterns in each of these tumors, and someone who had a positive signal, they were able to say that it's likely that the cancer that they had was in this and this specific organ system, with about or a little better than 90% accuracy. So the next step are further validation studies in larger patient populations. I believe they're actually underway. There's a company called Grail that has now gained approval for a study with 100,000 patients in the UK. So it's very promising there. Because if they can show that this test can actually usefully identify those patients in the general population who have cancer at an early stage, we know through all cancer work, through the history of cancer, that when we can detect these cancers early, that the cure rate is higher and the burden of cure, the amount of treatment needed to cure someone, is lower. I hope you were able to follow me up to this point because now I'm going to guide you through the market opportunity. Given the results I read in these studies, I believe that these cancer tests will take at least another 2 or 3 years until they're going to be commercially available. There are 2 companies that are having a kind of a head-to-head race, Illumina and Exact Sciences. Illumina acquired Grail and Exact Sciences acquired a company called Thrive Earlier Detection. And of these two, I believe Grail is going to be the first one to be approved commercially, given the approval of the study with these 100,000 patients. So when I looked at the technology, they're quite similar. Where they differ is mainly in how they locate cancer. So Thrive does it with so-called protein biomarkers that allow us to exactly see where the cancer is coming from. Also, I read that as we sequence DNA to find out if the DNA is cancerous, we hit certain limits when it comes to sensitivity. So with publicly available sequencing data, they found out that sensitivity couldn't be higher than 60%. Now, would that be a catastrophe? I don't think so, actually. In general, I think that multi-cancer screening tests have a justification. So, of course, low sensitivity will affect its adoption, but anything that can prevent cancer has permission to be sold commercially. I also think that these tests will initially be used as supplements, not as replacements for the overall cancer screening market, meaning the market opportunity by 2025 might be a bit limited. How I size the opportunity? I size it by looking at how many cancer cases are diagnosed every year. So there are around 18 million cases, and as these tests will cost around $500 to $1,000, and studies are only in the US and UK, I believe that these two countries are the demographic limit until 2025. In 2020, a bit over 2 million people have been diagnosed with cancer in these two countries. I believe that around 6 million tests are going to be sold in 2025 at an average price of $830, bringing us to an estimated market size of $5 billion in these two countries. So the costs of these tests are going to come down. In fact, I calculated that the costs could come down to $250 once the market is mature. I probably personally won't invest, at least not for the next 2 years, as I fear that the sensitivity limit could mean that these cancer tests will remain supplements and cannot grow over this $5 billion market. So meaning the only driver for growth will be demographical expansion, and I don't quite like this idea. If I'd had to decide between Exact Sciences and Grail, I believe that Grail is a great company and they will take substantial market share. But Illumina, the stock you would have to buy to buy Grail, is valued at a way too high multiple and has nearly no growth because sequencing costs haven't come down enough in the past years. On the other hand, Exact Sciences had massive growth in the past years because they had a screening test for colorectal cancer, and they are really leading, and so they took 20-30% market share, and that's why there was a kind of exponential growth there. I don't think it's something that is going to maintain, so the growth will slow in the next 2 years or so, and with that people will jump off as well. But I would buy Exact Sciences because they have similar revenues to Illumina and gross margins are high, so if they are able to go profitable, they could be valued in the area of Illumina. Maybe not as high, but going into that direction.